Hey, how's everybody doing? This is day 265, 365 days of racial change, towards racial change, whatever word you want to insert in there. Hey, this is our 100-day left over milestone. We are, oh, over the hump, so to speak, and I'm seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. It's just a little pinprick, but that's going to get steadily brighter and wider as we go on. Yeah, it's some work, but it's all necessary, you know. So we're going to together. We're going to finish well. Bright Sunday, I was just watching. Had to turn it off actually to get this going. And I've seen the movie many times, but Spike Lee's Malcolm X, starring Denzel Washington. Spike Lee's in it. A lot of great actors in that movie. I remember I saw that in the theater actually when it first came out. I was very much interested in it, and I wasn't even much about black issues, rights, and advocacy and stuff like that. Malcolm X, tumultuous 60s and all that stuff is just, it's always been kind of on my radar. So I actually went to the theater, and it was a movie long enough to have an intermission. You don't see that much. You go to a theater, they sit, and it's scientifically, the length is there for you to sit through the whole movie, essentially. But when Spike Lee's Malcolm X first came out, it was a pretty long, some work watching that to the end. So they had a nice intermission. I brought a lunch in anticipation and all that. I say that to say, some of the opening scenes in the movie, Malcolm X's character, Denzel Washington, narrating, and he's talking about some of the violence against his father's family, and living in Nebraska and being harassed by the Ku Klux Klan and all this. Just America is so disappointing on this black skin thing. I'm glad. I think maybe in some ways we've hit some bedrock, and we're making some incremental movement away. And maybe before I leave this mortal plane, shake off this mortal coil, I'll see some real movement as far as black equality, black participation, black inclusion in America's socio-economic landscape, which has the potential to be truly dynamic and explosive if all parties at least have equal opportunity to participate. If various parties can challenge their degrees of bigotry, racism, and stuff like that, then move beyond that, then you're going to see the greatness of a nation. I don't know. But you're always going to have some groups that want to frustrate that good time. It's like when I was in grade school. I remember one time we had a substitute teacher, and if you understand public school, when you have a substitute teacher, it's more like a full day of recess. It's the next best thing to having the day off from school in America is having a substitute teacher. So we had a substitute teacher, and for some reason, I guess we had extended recess inside or whatever. We were just playing around, and whole class is going wild, and I'm having you know, just kind of a sober time with some guys. I think we were playing cards, and another guy, you know, you know, and it was almost like he couldn't stand the peace and tranquility among us card players. So he had to come and mess with the cards and all this stuff. I smacked him in the head. I was always kind of reactionary in grade school, in public school. You know, not initiating fights, but ready to fight and stuff like that. And so I smacked him in the head and had to, fend him off. And then even later in the day, we're just chilling out. And one of my rivals, physical, athletic, you know, he stepped to me, you know, I'm trying to have some peace, yeah, let's have a fun time, but controlled, sober. And this is the second grade. So I had to throw him down. Yeah. So in America, in the world, right, even today we're having some issues with Iran. We think we're trying to have peace and all that stuff, and Iran's dropping bombs on a source of oil. So yeah, there's some people, men and women, who just want to see the world burn, who want to see frustration, who want to see turmoil, chaos, and they get off on that. There's something, about the human nature, black, white, brown, that individuals have that. And that brings me, I was thinking about this, the nature of man, and how, apparently successful society needs law and order, and we curtail violence against each other and property and things like that. But there's something missing in our ministry to mankind, that these individuals that almost require violence, require bloodshed. That is not. We've not figured out how to address that without war, extreme violence. It's something inherent in man, this murderous, this bloodshed-seeking behavior, and that may be one of the last frontiers in mankind. How to get people to live well together into perpetuity. Something's missing in our understanding. Understanding of the mechanism in human nature, and understanding how to address that. If it is even something to address. Now, getting back to the topic on hand, I kind of went off on a tangent there. Think about slavery. What is it about man? And we see this today. It's very much alive today. Our appliances, our vehicles and stuff. With slavery, dominating and getting as much work out of a resource with as little investment as possible is something mankind's been dealing with, since the beginning of time. Whether it's the slavery machine institution that America had, or whether it's from warfare and stuff like that. This aspect of enslaving human beings, about raping someone of their labor, is another, grisly aspect of human existence. humankind. You know, uh, is it like murder and bloodshed, some kind of necessary facet and aspect of living a human life and existence? I wonder. And how does the power, how does the overarching authority of mankind respond to that? Now, I would say that it is white, this power we talk about. You hear me say it every piece. I think I talked about the black condition right there. Let's talk about the white mind, the white condition, um, in its domination, in its the way it moves in the world. You know, Iran's response. They're not striking at um, the Saudis necessarily. They're making certain statements. They're causing some ripples in American life, in American economy, and that's what is at issue. That's what they are um, moving against. You know, but we see this. This they're my guess is they're a frustrated people, a frustrated nation. Being excluded from the international economic system. Something that probably goes back long before I was born. Some issue between the United States and the Middle East always, and it's over oil, no doubt. But there's been no resolution. The United States is coming on strong, and uh, we want to frustrate maybe missile and weapons development in Iran. So it's a frustrated country. Many of the areas are frustrated by America's domination in the world and our policy. Excuse me. But this is a white dominated, controlled uh, system. So the issue that anybody would have with America is it wouldn't be with America's black folk. I mean, we're sheltering in place as it is, but I think we'll find more, you know, more problems. They have more problems with this white power structure, overarching, overreaching, doing these land grabs around the world. That's where it comes from. So, you know, do whites people want to have more sensitivity about the way they move in the world? And I'm not talking, how can I say? This isn't any pejorative talk. These are facts. These are statistics, right? Um, this isn't a nation controlled by blacks where blacks move, you know, with such ease in the system and see senses of justice happening, for them. We got to work hard just to maintain, to keep our head above water a lot of times in this space. So the world's issues are not with us, definitely. We're still hobbled and trying to come out of our slavery experience and the ongoing resistance within America to black inclusion, participation, and success. So, hopefully white people are starting to ease up on that, you know, either worry about something else, ease up, use some energy to use that energy to do some good, and then stop being so obstructive uh, to black people participating as openly and as freely as you do, so that we can go to the shore every week, mountains every week, travel the world, more consistently. The majority of us, okay, not just a handful of us occasionally doing that. It took me 5 years to visit back home. Granted, I had some issues going on, but there's money, resources, stability. It shouldn't take 5 years for that to happen. Uh, that's what my experience was in America. All right. I'm inspired to do this work by a man named Dr. Claude Anderson. I read 3 of his works. We're in a Black History Reader. We're going to stay in this for a couple more days. We're going to get back to Uncle Tom's Cabin and finish that up. I promise you. But we are in this, a Black History Reader, 101 Questions You Never Thought to Ask. If you have the text, we are in page 52, question 16 today. We'll talk about that briefly at the end of this segment. Check out Black Labor, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice, and Dr. Anderson's National Plan to Empower Black America, Powernomics. You can find Dr. Anderson at powernomics.com. Behind me, you'll see the hashtag #US2 symbol, or supporting the Black Females Conversation. There, it's Facebook. Check them out. Check out Black Enough, BLAGGENUF, for Black Facebook Experience-ish. It's World Wide Web. If you can't find your flavor, do what you did. Start your own little project. This 365 days is a challenge, and it has overlapped with my education, so things are happening exponentially challenging in my life, but I am optimistic, especially with your support. And finally, like I mentioned, Uncle Tom's Cabin. We're going to get back to story time. Story time is actually my favorite piece, but you got to take, a strong meat along with the milk to be healthy here at Racial Change. All right, I'm Tom Nyback, day 265. Question is, how are demographics changing in majority black cities? And truth is, I don't see demographics changing. Well, it's a good question, but I think even in the description of this video, we're just gonna reiterate some things that are just status quo, ongoing. We're just going to talk about briefly how this idea, there's this fixed relationship between blacks and whites, and part of it is we can think about something I learned just recently about poverty. Did you know poverty it's not a percentage of your income. Poverty is there's a fixed figure that the government uses to determine poverty, which I tell you, if we could ever get that eradicated and go towards a true system of degrees and percentages, that would change a whole lot of things for a lot of people in accessing some wealth. But we got this, it's a fixed number, I don't know, forget what it is, that determines poverty in America. And so, the target for the white majority, white power to attack and keep black people in place is very obvious. and we see it in, well, heck, I'm even going through it right now. I'll use my own experience. Every the minimum wage now up to $15 an hour. But remember, changing minimum wages and stuff, it doesn't matter because prices are going to fluctuate, and all this erosion is going to happen to this increase in pay. Rents go up. Everybody, oh, are you making more money? Well, everything goes up. I say that to say, that it's all about this fixed relationship that the status quo, the people in charge of power, maintain. So this demographics question about changing, it doesn't really change. It appears, and then you've got a lot of people scrambling to keep it in place. In my city, I talk about the gentrification that is making an area acceptable for middle class. That's kind of you'll see that definition. What the people that make that definition really want to make it a determination between white and black folks is what they're really saying. Middle class. It's those white folks with access. In my city, I live in a state that's legalized marijuana. We have big technology boom, and that's part of that. So yeah, the places where black folks congregated, albeit sometimes illegally, doing illegal activity, oh, they swept all that out. They cleaned all that up, almost overnight. Uh, Rents and prices go up. So it's a multi-pronged attack to kind of price out black participation or participation of groups you don't want in an area. And they just move it out. They built new stuff and made it pretty hard for non-white people to get a hold and participate in that. They're very, very structured, orchestrated, and whatnot. But Dr. Anderson talks about, this cycle. We see a cycle, and what I mean is, it takes a while. It's not overnight, of course, but you'll see blacks kind of get it together economically, start migrating to suburbia or other areas dominated, inhabited by white folks, and then you see white folks are like, whoa. So it's a phenomenon. It's got a name called white flight. They move up on out of there. Well, then after a time, if maybe there's an economic change or blacks haven't done their part and kept that area up, created business, but just hung around as kind of custodians of the space, well then, powerful white money comes back and restructures, rebuilds, reinvigorates the geographical area, and suddenly, prices go up. Blacks got to move out. Whites come back. Part of the success of that is the infrastructure is in place for that to happen. I'm seeing some of that, in the city I live in. The need for infrastructure changes. The basics are there, but because there's more demands on the system, because the population has increased, there has been some initiatives and adjustments to get that space ready for the return of white folks. Um, Try to remember also this demographic question, though. Like I said, it's not necessarily change as it is. The demographic change is really keeping the status quo. But remember, it's not always been so peaceful. In my city, it's just you just tinker with the economics of the system, and you can rearrange the demographics of the city quite easily. You know, is what happens. But it's not always been so in every recognizable city. We got Rosewood, Tulsa. Look at riots in D.C., Chicago. Some of these other places that have experienced some of that extreme violence probably won't necessarily see that kind of the roughshod mob running over black folks in a space, but don't discount it by any means, um, in any shape or form. It can happen, but for the most part, now that the system knows how to work its magic, manipulate, things like that, we won't see any Tulsas or Rosewoods. Hopefully, again, they just tinker with the economics, but we can understand that if the white system sees that blacks or other groups have something of true value and they want it, they're going to work on ways to get it. Tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit about Jim Crow and the 13th Amendment and stuff like that, and how the system adjusted itself. That they freed the slaves, yeah, but now we create strict laws to imprison. But that's what you'll see, and that's what you do see in the interaction of whites in the land. All this restructuring. Wages go up. Oh, there's a restructuring. Prices are adjusted. Inflation erodes any of that momentum. You see that over and over again. Mentioned, got to give a shout out, of course, about immigration. 1965 immigration law, one of the more recent, and this was the Immigration Act to include Pacific Islanders, Mexicans, other groups that were excluded. Now you don't see any like affirmative action for darker peoples, specifically Africans. I haven't seen any specific act for that. But at 65, you had this go on. So now there's turning up this influx of brand new faces. They land here. If their people are here and they support them, these people gather in communities and all that. Even if they are spaced out like the Vietnamese, as they come, America tried to disperse them all over the space, but they communicated with other, and they had that privilege. You don't see black people do that. Why? Well, because over 300, 400, 500 years of conditioning and stuff like that, you don't have blacks, readily, freely embracing their color, their kind, coming over here. I think that has to be teased out and addressed. Dr. Anderson says, black people need to be recognized as a unique people. We could get some healing together if we started to focus, and had some training and some sensitivity and some understanding that we are a people, who need to really debrief about our identity. But immigration is an issue. I'm at the bottom of my time here. So Dr. Anderson also mentions the black overclass, middle class, not participating, and we see it. We see that pattern over and over as our athletes, entertainers reach that success and uh, penetrate white society, white mainstream. They kind of leave off of any interest in black communities. And finished as to a degree, whites remain some control over urban areas anyway in the first place. So even if you see this black area, yeah, blacks may be there, but who owns the land? Who's dictating policy? In that space. Some white person in the suburbs. A lot of times. Just think about that. Demographics. No new information here, really, but it's about control. But remember, it's always maintaining that status quo. Wherever the whites are at, you're going to see blacks proportionately at a distance underneath um, those groups up top. I'm Thomas Nyback. This is day 265 out of the way, 365 days towards racial change. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.